Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kevin Sumption. I'm the Director of the Australian National Maritime Museum, and I would like to begin by acknowledging the Gadigal people as the traditional custodians of not only the lands but the waters on which we're all gathered here this evening. And I also acknowledge all traditional custodians of the lands and waters throughout Australia, and I pay my respects to them and their cultures, and to their elders, both past and present. It's an incredible pleasure, indeed an honour, to be here tonight with you all. This is a very special evening for the museum, as we have a special presentation on the very recent discovery of HMAS AE1. And I'd like to begin by paying a particular thanks and welcome to the Senator, the Honourable Marise Payne, Minister for Defence. Also, the Honourable Rimbink Pato, OBE MP, Minister for Foreign Affairs and Trade for Papua New Guinea. The Honourable Jelta Wong, MP, Police Minister for East New Britain, Papua New Guinea. Vice Admiral Tim Barrett, AO, CSC, RAN, Chief of Navy. Mr. Leo Oki, Acting Consul General representing the Deputy High Commissioner of Papua New Guinea. Commander Mark Chadwick, RNZN, Naval Advisor representing the New Zealand High Commissioner and New Zealand Defence Attaché. Also, Brigadier Andrew Harrison, DSO, MBE, Defence Advisor for the British High Commission. Special thanks also Rear Admiral Peter Briggs from Find AE1 and the Find AE1 Expedition Leader. A thanks also for this evening to Commodore Mark Sanders, RAM retired, the President of the Submarine Institute of Australia. Mr. Julius Voyalaris, President of the Trustees of the Papua New Guinea National Museum and Art Gallery. We are indeed honoured to have you here this evening. Thank you. Also, a special welcome to the Australian National Maritime Museum Chairman, Mr. Peter Dexter, AM, and councillors, the Honourable Margaret White and the Honourable Ian Campbell for joining us this evening. And also, we have amongst us the former Museum Chairman, Mr. Peter Sinclair, AM, CSC, as well as the Councillor, the Honourable Peter Collins, AM, QC. As you can see, we have a very distinguished range of guests with us this evening, which is fitting for such an important presentation. But I would like to pay a particular and very warm welcome to the many descendants of the crew of HMAS AE1 who tonight are gathered. I think we have over 70 descendants with us this evening, so nearly half of our representation this evening are from those of you with a direct connection to the men of AE1, and we are indeed very honoured to have you here today. Ladies and gentlemen, the museum is humbled to have been part of this very important expedition, a project to find HMAS AE1, but more importantly, the crew of that submarine. And by hosting tonight's reception, we remain very committed to telling the story of AE1 and the men, the 35 men of that crew, not only today but for future generations. These are men whose experience, these are brave men whose experience was that they were to lose their lives, some of the first men to lose their lives for the Royal Australian Navy in the First World War, and we will continue to remember their sacrifice and bravery. To begin this evening, it's my pleasure to invite Senator the Honourable Marise Payne, Minister for Defence, to the stage. Please welcome Minister Payne.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and Kevin, thank you very much for your warm welcome here to the Australian National Maritime Museum this evening. Let me also acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands and the waters on which we are gathered this evening, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I acknowledge the Chief of Navy, Vice Admiral Tim Barrett, my ministerial colleagues from Papua New Guinea. It is such an honour and such a pleasure that you are able to be here this evening. Minister Rimbik Pato and Minister Jelta Wong, thank you very much for joining us here. New South Wales Minister Stuart Ayres, Defence members from Australia, the United Kingdom and New Zealand, Rear Admiral Peter Briggs, and most importantly, to the families, the descendants of the crew of AE1. Let me also apologise that, as is the wont of ministerial life, I may have to depart before the end of formal proceedings this evening. That is no measure of my lack of interest in this particular event, just a function of time and place. And I do extend my apologies in advance if I have to make an early departure. Ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to make some very brief observations about this particular evening and the efforts that we are recognising here tonight. It was in 1907 that then Prime Minister Alfred Deakin, having attended a conference in London, returned to Australia, convinced of the valuable role that submarines would play in the future, both as a potent weapon of war and, in today's language, a strategic capability for advancing Australia's national interests. Prime Minister Deakin understood that there was no other naval platform that could do all that submarines can do. As a result, in late 1910, a contract was signed with a shipyard at Barrow-in-Furness in England for the construction of AE1 and AE2, the A in their names standing for Australian. Both the submarines were commissioned in Portsmouth on the 28th of February 1914 and arrived in Sydney on the 24th of May 1914, just 3 months before the outbreak of World War I. It was literally a baptism of fire, as they were immediately deployed to support the war effort. AE1 and AE2 were assigned to operations in New Guinea waters just at the outbreak of World War I. 1 month later, AE1 was gone. Until her recent discovery off the coast of Papua New Guinea, we weren't able to provide the nation with answers about the fate of AE1 and her courageous crew. I very much personally, and acknowledge on behalf of the government, our great appreciation to the efforts of all who've helped find AE1, of all who have helped to solve Australia's oldest naval mystery. In doing so, the discovery of the AE1 has reminded us of how this fledgling capability has grown and developed over the last century, and indeed the ever-increasing strategic capability that submarines provide Australia. I'm reminded regularly of that trajectory. Today, of course, the Turnbull government is building on Prime Minister Deakin's foresight through our commitment to a rolling acquisition program which will provide Australia with a fleet of 12 affordable, regionally dominant conventional submarines. And they will be a truly sovereign capability. Just as AE1 and AE2 did in World War I, our future submarines will play a key role in defending and furthering efforts to enhance stability in our region by providing Australia with a strategic capability to reinforce the rules-based global order. There are men and women in the crews of our current submarines and in those future submarines, all who work in support of that future submarine fleet, who will draw, I think, much inspiration from not only the dedication of the crew of AE1, but from those who did not rest until she was found. It is a great honour for me to be here this evening. It was a great honour to participate in a very small way on behalf of the government in contributing to this effort to finally locate AE1. Thank you very much for your presence here this evening. Thank you very much for your efforts over so many years. And I very much appreciate the opportunity to have said a few words this evening.